Today's sponsor is ExpressVPN. Now, you might be wondering, why do you need a VPN service? To be honest, I'm going to give you my experience just straight up. I like playing games like Grand Theft Auto. Heck, I like playing multiplayer games in general. I connect to weird websites all the time. And when it comes to connecting to weird websites or playing games like GTA, your IP address is exposed to third parties all over the world. So if I want to browse things while keeping my static IP hidden, then I use something like ExpressVPN to make sure that somebody can't just grab it and DDoS me later. That's pretty much the only reason I've been using it for. Heck, if I'm watching things on services, movie services, TV services, and I want to just magically switch countries, instead of buying a plane ticket, it's as simple as picking any country from these ExpressVPN lists and just connecting to them.
And that means instead of watching Family Guy funny moments, I can watch it right here on Netflix, amongst thousands of other shows.
Ladies and gentlemen, find out how you can get 3 months of ExpressVPN for free by going to expressvpn.com/SOG or clicking the link in the description below. Go to expressvpn.com/SOG and find out how you can get 3 months of ExpressVPN all for free. Ladies and gentlemen, let's get to the video.
Hello, guys and gals, me Mutahar, and ladies and gentlemen, today we've got the Steam Deck on the Steam Dock connected to a keyboard, mouse, and a good old juicy capture card, which I checked, by the way, if it was recording, because oh boy, would I be crying if I failed to get this juicy meme together. Now, ladies and gentlemen, what if I told you today we're installing Windows 98 on the Steam Deck? You might be like, but Muta, why would one attempt such a thing? And the thing, honestly, in this channel, it's because we can, okay? Because we want to. Now, I love the Steam Deck. I've been playing a crap ton of games on it, games like Dark Souls Remastered, but I've been having a hankering for some classic PC gaming. Now, I never had a retro PC gaming system with Voodoo graphics, but you bet today with the power of emulation, we're going to achieve the same. Now, normally, you might be like, wait, what about the virtual machine stuff? Ladies and gentlemen, today we're not using hypervisors or anything. Because Windows 98 is so old and we're dealing with hardware so new, with Ryzen chipsets and brand new graphic cards, Windows 98, hell, let's go all the way up to Windows XP, maybe even Windows Vista, do not work well under VMware or virtual machine software in general. For instance, recently I've been trying to get a Windows XP system up and running, and I've been pulling my hair out, realizing that it wasn't me, it wasn't the virtual machine software. My Ryzen 9 was just too mature of a processor to handle something as old and gold as Windows XP. So today we're actually going to be using virtualization to achieve something known as we're going to be using emulation to really achieve proper retro PC gaming. Now here I've got the Steam Deck fired up with desktop mode, because while we could do this just using the keyboard and the touchpads, I'm going to actually pull my hair out if I don't have a keyboard and mouse for this. Now, because we're dealing with emulation, we're going to be downloading a piece of software known as PCM, okay? So PCM, if we go to their website right here, step one, they're a emulator literally there to emulate old PC hardware. So they're constantly adding new machines like the Compact Desk Pro and the Intel VS440FX, okay? Wild new machines. And if you look at graphic cards, they've got the 3DFX Voodoo Banshee. I know some people old in the audience might recognize the name 3DFX back when graphic cards had 2 megabytes of video memory. So here we're going to download it, and we're going to download the file for Windows, because I figured on this channel, instead of using the native binaries for Linux, which would be the smart option, I'm just going to run this under Proton via Windows, because we can. Again, if you know your Linux, just download the Linux version. But here we're going to download Windows, and the way that we're going to get a Windows application to work underneath the deck is we're going to open up Steam, we're going to go to Library, and we're going to add a game that's non-Steam. So typically, I have extracted PCM into a file somewhere on my system, right here in the PCM folder. So this is the standard directory of PCM, but what we're looking for is the PCM.exe file. So somewhere in here, you'll find PCM.exe. That's the program. So all we need to do is we need to go to the Steam non-Steam interface, and we're going to browse it. We're going to make sure that the file type is all files, and we're going to basically go all the way to the home directory. So where the desktop is on the Steam Deck is home, deck, and then all the way down to desktop. And of course, our folder is PCM, wherever you would store this file. And then you would basically pick, again, that PCM.exe. So once you open it, it'll create a new entry in your Steam library, okay, PCM. Again, you're still not done here entirely. To make sure PCM can read our micro SD card if you have it ready, go to the properties on Steam and enter this right here, Steam compat mount equal run media and MMC BLK0P1. This will allow this program to look into the micro SD card if you need to. Let's say that you have a 256 gig card in your Steam Deck and you want to store the emulator there. This will allow you to actually run the game or allow the actual program to detect that micro SD. You kind of have to do it for games like GTA 5 if you want to install into the micro SD card or whatnot, or allow a third-party launcher to recognize your SD anyways. So once you've done that, again, go to the properties, once again, go to compatibility, and make sure you do force the use of a specific Steam Play compatibility tool. Now you can set this to Proton Experimental or Proton 7.0-5, whatever the recent one is. I went with Experimental, and what this will allow you to do is run a Windows program through Wine, which is a compatibility layer for Linux. So once you hit play over here, it should just launch it like a standard PC program, and we can actually get started with the joys and fun. So here you can see I've got a test emulator right here that I was doing just to see if I could get this up and running. But we're going to make a brand new one together. So down in the bottom left over here, you'll notice that we've got this brand new folder, okay, brand new configuration, and we're going to call this old, okay, just because it's an old system. We're going to hit OK, and what it's going to do is it's going to spark up this new window. So in this new window, what we're going to do is we're going to find a processor or a machine type in this case. And the machine type, very simple, we're going to go all the way down to socket 7. We're going to go to shuttle hot 557. Again, click that, and you're going to see that you have different types of CPU. So you can do an Intel one, an AMD one, an IDT, and a Cyrix one. So we're going to go with Intel, okay? We're going to go all the way here, and we're going to pick Pentium MMX 233. Now, of course, you can see that you've got plenty of options like overdrive, mobile Pentium. For our sake, we're just going to go with 233. Now, certain games and programs might benefit from an older or faster version of that Pentium processor. But again, for our sake, we're just going to go with MMX 233. Now, in the memory, we're going to make sure this is 128 megabytes because it's the maximum we can do on that specific board at the time. Now you go to this graphics tab, and here you can pick a special driver. So instead of CGA, we're going to go down, or we're going to go, up in this case, and we're going to go to 3DFX Voodoo 3 3000. We're going to put a Voodoo 3 card in the system. Voodoo 3 was like basically an accelerator card, so Voodoo Graphics back in the day. Back in the day, you needed 3D acceleration cards to get better graphical effects. You think RTX is wild these days? Back then, for shaders, you had to go out of your way to get it. So here we have to go to this special configuration button, and it'll open up this device configuration for Voodoo Graphics. Now here we're going to go all the way to Voodoo 2. So when Voodoo 2 is enabled, we've got frame buffer memory at 2, texture memory at 2. We could go all the way up to 4, but in our case, in the device we're running on, 2 is fine. Now, of course, render threads, we can go all the way up to 4, 2, 1. I'm going to keep it at 2. You could also emulate SLI. Yes, the technology is that old, but in this case, we're just going to keep it like this intended. Hit OK. And then we're going to move on to sound. Obviously, you want to hear your games while you're going. So you're going to go over here, and you're going to go to Sound Blaster 16. So once that's up and done and going, then you're going to go onto this drive section here. Now keep all of this the same. Standard IDE, 3.5-inch, 2.88 megabyte floppy disks, because you're going to need floppy disks back in the day. You're going to need to make sure all of these things are the same, and now we're going to make a drive. So over here where it says Drive 0 Primary Master, just below it is going to be a type. Make sure it's hard drive and click this little drive with the plus icon here. So now we're going to make a raw image, and we're going to call this test drive, okay? Or we'll just call it HDD, all right? Just simple. Now here you're going to make sure the size is 2,000 megabytes. I believe you can go all the way up to like 3,000, but we're just going to go with 2,000 megabytes because we're probably just going to install 1 or 2 games. Not a whole heck of a lot of things. Again, it's a machine to just run games, not actually run a full Windows 98 computer. I mean, you could use this as a 98 computer, But again, I'm just running a couple games off this anyways. And again, keep type custom, hit OK. It's going to make a drive, and then hopefully, if all things are done, you're basically going to get all of this. To make sure you're right here, make sure sectors are 63, heads are 16, cylinder is 4063, and then of course the size is going to be 1999 megabytes, okay, so 2000. Once that's done, go over to the mouse, make sure this is fine, all of this is okay, and just hit OK down here. So now that that's all done, we're going to hit play, and we're going to load up this virtualized machine. So of course, you can see that we're firing up, and eventually, you know, wow, that's vintage. Energy Star EPA pollution preventer. Jesus Christ. I'm feeling old. Now, because we don't have anything into it, you're going to see disk boot failure, okay? Insert system disk and press enter. One thing's for sure here, make sure you go to video resolution and hit resizable, and then go to video and do output stretch mode and just do, I think it's fine if we do like square pixels, okay? Just so we can like full screen it like this. Now at this point, we're going to need to put in a startup disk because in order to install Windows 98, you need to put in a floppy disk that you can then use to read the actual disk drive and launch the setup. So we actually have this right there and then. I'm not going to tell you where to get a Windows 98 setup file. Find it officially, find it somewhere. It's an old enough operating system. I'm sure there's many legal avenues to find a copy of it somewhere, okay? So of course, I'm going to put the ISO in there, and then I'm actually going to go to the disk, and I'm going to add a boot drive, all right? So second edition boot image, we're going to hit open, and of course, in this case, we're just going to do we're going to hit enter over here, and hopefully this floppy drive will allow us to actually boot the CD. So give it a second, let's load it up, here it is. Now, of course, in this section, you're going to go to Start Windows 98 Setup from CD-ROM. So hit enter, and you're just going to wait a little bit. It's going to be reading all the drivers, and eventually you'll see this blue load setup screen. So give it a little minute, you'll get there, and then we can proceed with the setup. Here we go! Set up! To set up Windows, press enter. So again, press enter over here, and you want to do configure unallocated disk space, because remember that 2 gig drive we made isn't ready to be used, okay? It's unallocated, it's a clean, pristine virgin drive. Let's defile it together. So of course, you have a drive over 512 in size. Yes, enable large disk support, okay? So hit yes. Back in the day, yes, anything over 512 megabytes was for the rich boys, all right? Let's get this going. Setup will restart your computer, make sure the 98 boot disk is in drive A, which it is. Hit enter, and then of course, we're going to be restarting the system, and we should be getting a setup going on. Brother, you can hear the fan spinning up on the deck as it's doing shit. All right, so start Windows 98 setup from CD-ROM, get it going. And again, at this point, you'll be given a different screen because now we're going to be actually installing Windows 98 together, okay? Now, one thing to note, because we're emulating this and not running it through hypervisors, we're actually emulating the CPU from back in the day. So the speed of this installation will be reflective of the speed of installations from back in the day. So right now we're formatting drive C, a 2 gig drive. Again, if we weren't emulating the processor from back in the day, that MMX233 processor, we would have been done this a lot faster. But we are actually reliving what it's like to install Windows 98 from the yesteryears, okay? So again, format drive C. Our Steam Deck is not fired up anymore. The fans are not spinning out of control. But give it a minute. Once we're actually installing Windows and running some games on it, this thing will get back to jet engine levels. I promise you. Setup is preparing to install Windows. Please wait. Oh, come on. Let's go. Get it going. Oh my, dude, this brings me so back ScanDisk. Oh, every time you pulled the power out and started, you always had to check your discs back in the day, man. You always got that like error shame bar going on. So welcome to the Windows 98 setups. Congratulations on choosing 98, the software that makes your computer more powerful, reliable, manageable, and entertaining. Let's go. All right, so continue into it. It's going to tell you it's a 30 to 60 minute install, which, because we're emulating the processor, will definitely be a 30 to 60 minute install. But here it is. We're going to guide through the rest of this installation. And hopefully, all right, it's going to ask me for a CD key. Now, I'm not going to tell you the CD key. I have it right here simply because that would be violating some piracy rule on YouTube, and I'm not going to tell you that. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. Again, Windows 98 is so old, I'm sure you can find a legal CD key somewhere floating around, okay? So again, choose the directory, see Windows is fine, hit next. It's going to check for installed components. Again, just give it a minute, all right? It's going to go through this together, all right? 60%. Yeah, it literally is reflective of speed back in the old days. So again, checking for available disk space. 2 gigs is way more than the recommended requirements for Windows 98. Don't you worry. Again, I don't think the kernel for Windows changed until like 2000 anyway, so this is still like MS-DOS era shit. So again, keep it typical, which is recommended, and go next. Install the most important components. Again, hit next. That's recommended. And of course, the computer name. So I'm going to call this Steam Deck, okay? And again, you can just keep this all the same. Keep it default. Establishing your location. We're fine. We're in the United States. Now, in the startup disk, again, what I want to do, all right, is make sure you go to your disk here and just eject drive A. You don't need it anymore. And again, you don't need a startup disk. So hit cancel. Oh, wait, no, don't do that. No. Do you want to quit startup? No. Go next. Do not actually make a startup disk. If it says click OK to continue, just hit cancel and skip this step because you don't need a startup disk. You already have it. And then, of course, start copying files, hit next, and of course, we're ready to go. It's going to install Windows 98. Now, this is going to be the longest step, and typically after this is going to be you basically going through the final stages of the setup, and the final stages typically revolve you actually setting up your password. One thing you will be asked is to basically give it a location to scan for drivers. Now, you want to make sure your Windows 98 disk is still present in your VM. You'll never have taken it out. But you'll want to make sure that it routes to the CD-ROM directory drive and just hit OK. Eventually, it'll find a plug-and-play driver for a monitor, which is exactly what you want. And once that's good, you'll hear this beautiful, pristine sound, and that'll let you know that Windows 98 is pretty much ready to go. Now, we're not done and clear yet. You're going to still need to install your video drivers. So because we have a Voodoo 3 graphic driver, it's not difficult to find these floating around on the internet. You want to find them, download them, and use them and install them into Windows 98. You're going to restart the system and hopefully you'll have Voodoo graphics ready to go. Now, because this is Windows 98, DirectX 7 is the last supported version of Windows 98's DirectX libraries, so you want to make sure DirectX 7.0c is downloaded. You want to get that installed, and once that's good to go, you can use DXDiag by going to Start and Run and making sure that your 3D acceleration and your DirectDraw works. If everything is done right, it should absolutely work right out of the box. You can even change the mouse settings in the installation to completely slow so you can navigate the actual Windows 98 experience better. And of course, you can also go down here and increase the resolution and the color depth so your actual system looks a bit more pleasant. Now, when it comes to internet connectivity, don't expect much out of Windows 98, period. Most of the websites will not function with the old-ass Microsoft Internet Explorer you have. In fact, no recent browser version that's even supported by 98, if at all, will work with any modern-day website. Even beyond all of it, don't expect any connectivity to other systems, period, since most of those servers are dead as hell anyways. When it comes to games, you can play things like benchmarks to basically test if your acceleration works, and in my case, it absolutely did. The frame rate wasn't all the way there, but that was also because the Steam Deck wasn't really capable of emulating this perfectly. There's an identifier at the top of PCM that'll tell you 100% if your emulation is working. If it's not 100% most of the time, that means there's a bottleneck somewhere in the system. While I like the Steam Deck, it is not the most powerful system out there, so obviously even emulating Windows 98 in this fashion might be just a bit too much for the Steam Deck. But in general gaming experiences, running things like Quake 2 or old PC games from this era work pretty fine for the most part. In fact, they reflect pretty well for games of that year. Now, obviously, when we added this as a non-Steam game, you're actually able to use PCM as part of the game mode version of the Steam Deck. So if you have games installed, you can even map the controller on the Steam Deck to match those PC games and actually play this with some great level of degree. I actually do enjoy playing older PC games like this. Now, obviously, you might be like, Muda, why don't I use GOG? You can absolutely do that. You can actually download games from GOG, which have all the patches applied to support older games with a modern touch, with modern systems. You can also use things like DOSBox if you're running games from that era and you know DOSBox can support these titles. I choose to go with the emulation route because I like the actual touch and feel of using Windows 98 and playing games from that era in the appropriate operating system as well too. Sure, you spend a little bit extra performance, but I kind of like the feel for it. And honestly, at the end of the day, it's cool to just have Windows 98 fully functioning on my Steam Deck anyways. You know, beyond just a cool party trick, I like to have extra features and availabilities. This thing is already an emulation god. All right, I'm already playing Super Nintendo games and I'm already playing PlayStation 1 and 2 titles every goddamn day on this device. Why not my Windows 98 retro gaming PC if I can? Ladies and gentlemen, I installed Windows 98 on the Steam Deck. And honestly, it took an hour out of my life, but it's probably going to add several hours of fun time for my old days of PC gaming. Ladies and gentlemen, let me know if you like what you saw. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Dislike it if you dislike it. I am going to install some dirty malware and see if it actually kills the Steam Deck entirely. If it does, I'll update you with sadness. If it doesn't, I'll update you regardless. This is me, Mutahar, and I am out.